Welcome to International Forum. In March of 2010, the United States Congress passed what many call a historic health reform bill to address many of the big problems facing America's healthcare system. For example, covering the uninsured, reform of the health insurance market, and making healthcare more rational overall, etc. Many Americans, however, remain confused about what the health reform bill is all about, what it is, how it may affect them, how much it is going to cost, or whether they will be paying more taxes to help pay for it. Here with us today to explain many of these questions is one of America's leading health economists and health policy expert, Uwe Reinhardt. Uwe Reinhardt is the James Madison Professor of Political Economy and Professor of Economics and Public Affairs at the Department of Economics and the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton University. A much sought-after opinion maker on issues relating to healthcare, many of you will have seen him on TV or heard him on the radio, such as the National Public Radio, CBS, ABC, and Bloomberg Radio. We're honored today to have him as our special guest. So now please join me in welcoming Uwe Reinhardt to our program today. Welcome, Uwe Reinhardt.
Thank you
Professor.
for having me.
Yeah, first let me ask you, why this major health reform at this particular time in the first place?
It's long overdue. This has been brewing actually for 30 years, and we never got it done. And the build-up was a health spending growth that was unsustainable in the future. Let me explain. Over the last 40 years, health spending in this country grew 2.5 percentage points faster than the rest of the GDP. And you can build a little equation, it's quite easy to project. And the projection is, while we are now spending 17% of the GDP, gross domestic product, on healthcare, it'll be 40% by the year 2050. Almost half the GDP will go just for healthcare. Now that just can't be. It doesn't make sense to run a country that way. So that's the first problem.
So how does U.S. health spending compare with other countries? I know we're expensive, we know this, but how much more expensive?
Well, the second most expensive health system in the world is Switzerland, and I think they are about 11% of GDP.
And we're 17, so there's
we're
a
17, but they have a much older population than we do.
Which should cost more.
Should cost more, and ours less. Canada is, on a per capita basis, about half of what we spend.
So do Americans, are they making enough in terms of salary and wages to help pay for this?
No, you see, that is the second problem. Even if as a country as a whole we could afford 40%, which really can't, but if we could, people below the median income, which is now family income about $60,000 per family, and median means 50% of families have a lower income. People like that will be systematically priced out of health insurance and out of health care unless people in the upper income part of the income distribution pay taxes to give them subsidies to buy health care. Health care now for a family of 4 in America, on average, cost $18,000 a year. That's for people under age 65. If you add in the people over 65, it's even more expensive. But just families, privately insured, under age 65, the average spending is $18,000. So if you work as a sales clerk at Home Depot or someone, maybe make $25,000 a year, $18,000 would eat up all your income. If 2 of you are working, you might have $50,000, $60,000, but $18,000 will eat 1/5 of that away, and that's just unaffordable. So that's the second major problem we have, that even if nationally we could afford it, half the country cannot afford it.
Is that why we're having an ever-growing number of the uninsured?
That's exactly why.
So how many do we have?
Well, at any point, if you do a survey and ask people, are you insured at this moment or not, it's over 50 million who will say no.
But that is about 15
15
of
to
the
16%
American
of the
population.
American population.
Wow.
There's no other country in the industrialized world
Yeah.
that has this problem, and they cannot understand why we in America do, given we're one of the richest nations.
And also one hears all the time about that we're just simply not getting our money's worth
That is,
for what we spend on healthcare.
that is yet
Yes.
another problem. Problem number 3,
Yeah.
that if for the enormous amount we spend, we don't get our money's worth. And how do we know this? Well, there was a study done, sponsored by the Business Roundtable, usually conservative people. They hired some 12 health economists to look at what Europeans spend and what they get, and what we spend and what we get. And they concluded for the money we spend, we get about 23% less value than we should. Mind you, for absolutely every service or product, pills or visits, we pay usually twice as much than people in Canada or in other nations pay. So a lot of it is just extra higher prices.
Higher prices
Higher
for
prices
everything.
for
Therefore,
everything.
the total spending for healthcare is just higher.
Is higher, yeah. And
Yeah.
what we're getting in value, we do get good healthcare when it's good in America. It's terrific when it's good. But it doesn't match the spending. And that's the shortfall of 23%.
And therefore, the major reform now.
There's one
The-
additional problem,
Yeah.
which is that the quality of American healthcare, which we always assume to be the best in the world,
Yes, you hear that all the time.
at its best is unrivaled. In our best health centers, there's nothing like it in the rest of the world. But on average, it's been found to be sort of in the middle of the pack. There was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine by Elizabeth McGlynn and colleagues that said on average Americans get the right agreed upon recommended treatment only 55% of the time.
For all types of care.
For all types of care, and it varies, but it doesn't vary by income class. It's sort of an equal opportunity lack of
So a
quality.
rich person can get the inappropriate care nevertheless.
Just as much as a poor person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that President Obama ran on a major health reform platform, and now we have a bill, the new health bill. Tell us about that. People call it Obamacare. Tell us, what is Obamacare? What's in it, first of all?
Well, yeah, Obamacare is actually giving the president more credit that I believe he deserves, although he obviously has much to do with it. But this was really a joint project between initially Obama's plan, which was then taken up by the Senate, Senator Baucus, who wrote a wonderful white paper called A Call to Action Health Reform 2009, which was the blueprint of what the Senate was going to do. And then the House had their own ideas, Nancy Pelosi, Congressman Waxman, and they put a bill together. And ultimately it was a very deft parliamentary maneuver that some people, Republicans, frown upon, but they managed to get this bill passed. It does have Obama's ideas in it, but it really is a joint product.
But tell us, is it a government takeover of American healthcare? Is it socialized medicine, as opponents of the bill call this?
No, it's not a government takeover. It does, first of all, inject an additional $1 trillion of health spending, mainly for the now uninsured, but that's over 10 years.
So how many of the uninsured, the 50 million uninsured, will this bill cover?
That is estimated by the Congressional Budget Office to cover 32 million of those. Now, you say $1 trillion, is that a lot of money? Well, yes. If you divide it by the Princeton endowment, you could build quite a few Princetons for that. However, in those 10 years, we would have spent on healthcare $34 trillion anyhow. So the $1 trillion is only 3% of $34 trillion.
It's not a lot, is
It's
it?
not a lot.
No.
Now, if you say, in fairness, this bill, we switch on the reform only in 2014, so it's really 6 years, then you come to 5%. So basically, it's a 5% increase in health spending. I don't imagine that you would call anything 5% a government takeover of the healthcare system. The private system stays in place. There would be no new government plan for the people under 65, which had been proposed. That was killed as a gesture to the Republicans, so that was taken out. So it's basically private insurance. Where's the government takeover? The government takeover isn't a takeover, but there are regulations on the insurance industry, what they must do. There are regulations on physicians, what they must reveal about their prices and the quality of their care. The physicians and the hospitals will be in statistical fishbowls where their prices and the quality of their care will be more transparent. I don't think the Republicans would object to that. This is what everyone has been asking for.
Right,
It's not a
transparency.
government takeover to ask, show your prices. I mean, is it a government takeover that Macy's has to tell you what a shirt costs?
Yeah, right, right. What other main features of this bill are?
Well, so covering the uninsured is the main feature, but the
Right.
second major feature
Yeah.
is a reform of the health insurance market, not for the employment-based system, for the large companies, but for that part of the insurance market that serves individuals, small businesses like gas stations, restaurants, and even medium-sized businesses, say, with less than 100 employees. And that market has traditionally done the following. They set the premium on the basis of your health status. So if you were chronically ill, you either couldn't afford the insurance they would charge you. They had to charge you.
Because it will be,
you would
premiums
cost
will be
that
so
much.
high.
Yeah, the premiums would be too high. Secondly, they could just refuse you. And the third thing they could do, if they gave you insurance and then you developed, say, a serious illness and found you made some mistake in your application, you didn't fully reveal all your health problems from before, they could rescind your policy and say, no, we cancel it. None of that is allowed anymore. Insurers cannot use health status to price the premium. They cannot refuse you. It's a guaranteed issue. And they cannot rescind what they do. There can be no lifetime limits on the benefits you get. So that's a drastic reorganization of that business, and the insurance industry is justifiably shell-shocked and asks, how do we cope with this?
What about, I mean, would health insurance under this new bill be affordable? I mean, it will remain expensive, right?
Yes and no. For one, there is that extra trillion. Now, how is that going to be spent? About roughly 400 of that, 450 billion, will be simply to put uninsured low-income people into Medicaid for the poor, the program that already exists, and SCHIP, which is a children's health insurance program, a companion of Medicaid. So half of the people will go in there. The rest will be subsidies for the premiums you have to pay to private insurance. And that goes up to 400% of the federal poverty level, which for a family of four is $88,000. So families up to them will get subsidies.
A family of four making up to $88,000 will receive government subsidies to help pay for their health insurance premium.
Right. Another way to put it is the law says that none of these families up to $88,000 should pay more than 9.8% of their family income for health insurance premiums. Now, for lower income people, that percentage is lower, but that's for the upper. Now, however, supposing you make 450% of the federal poverty level, but you make $100,000 as a family, then you're on your own. You won't get any subsidies. And for those families, if they buy in the individual market, their premiums could actually go up. They could go up because they won't get any subsidies. And the reason the premiums could go up is the following. First of all, the benefit package is now specified. So it's richer than what they might have bought on their own. So that drives premiums. But the other problem is the bill mandates young people to buy health insurance. Now that means young people will be asked to subsidize the health care of the sicker older people. That is, for young people, premiums will definitely go up in the individual market. Now in the employment-based market, that's happening. At Princeton, young healthy professors will subsidize older sicker professors with their premiums. That's already happening, but in that market it never did happen. So these young people will object.
Is that fair to the young people?
Now that's an interesting question. Many Americans say it's not only unfair, it's unconstitutional to mandate people to have insurance. But a European, and I am an ex-European, we think differently. Europeans know a secret Americans don't know, and the secret is this. Everyone gets old.
True.
Americans don't know this, but
True.
A European 30-year-old knows that at some point he may be 60. At some point he may have a chronic disease. And he's, in a way, making a down payment now as a young person, paying more by getting health insurance more cheaply at age 60. Americans don't think that way, and they will be shell-shocked. Now, the problem is that a lot of young people will disobey the law and then have to pay a penalty. But the penalty is so mild that it makes sense to break the law, actually, and pay the penalty, which means most of these policies will be from a pool of older and sicker people, and that'll drive up the premium. So I believe that piece of the health reform bill needs more work.
Needs more work, yeah, because otherwise we will never get to universal coverage.
No, we won't. And I was with 12 health insurance Blue Cross executives the other day, and they say, look, it's not that we're nasty. We just don't know how to do this without raising premiums. And every economist who is honorable will agree with them to saying, yes, this will drive up premiums unless young people can be induced to go buy the insurance.
Now, you mentioned that the cost of this bill will be $1 trillion over 10 years. How are we going to pay for it?
Oh, it's paid for, actually, at least on paper it is. There will be $420 billion additional taxes on high-income people.
So the wealthier will pay more taxes.
Will pay more to be their brothers and sisters' keeper. That's a fact. There will also be a whole array of small taxes on the device industry, $20 billion over 10 years, on the insurance industry, sort of piddly taxes. I think that is regrettable, all these taxes. It would have been better to put a small sales tax on everyone and say, hey, you pay 0.5% of everything you buy, every shirt, every restaurant bill, 0.5%. We put that money in a pool, and that's your health insurance contribution, rather than all these business taxes, which I think are just a nuisance.
But okay, tell us, what do you think are some of the big obstacles on the road to implementation of this bill? Because the bill is just the beginning of a very long process, correct?
Yeah, the American people think that when the president signs a bill with a pen and all these people around him, that you have a law. You really don't. That's a misconception. That is only, in some way, the blueprint. That's what he signs. It then goes to the machinery, the regulators, the bureaucrats, who have to write the regulations. If you look at this bill, 3,000 pages, and you count how often it says the Secretary of Health, HHS, Health and Human Services, shall determine, shall set this rate, shall do this, shall do that. It is mentioned hundreds of times. Each of them may trigger hundreds of regulations. They have to be put in the Federal Register. They will then have comments on them. They get revised. And then if the Congress doesn't like it, they can even then still kill it. So the bill won't really be a law that you and I and everyone else feels till 2014. So it's a major obstacle to get this done. Where do you get the workforce to actually get this done? And it'll be lobbied to pieces, of course. In the meantime, it's going to be a huge lobbying enterprise. That's one obstacle. The other one is that Republicans clearly, to a man and woman, voted against it and are likely to win substantial votes in the fall. they could throw up
You mean in the November
in the November election, the congressional elections. They could throw up roadblocks. A third obstacle is that probably a dozen states have, the attorneys general have sued the government, arguing that this mandate is unconstitutional, which could overturn the bill. So there are many, many obstacles to get this done. In the end, you cannot do health reform unless the people who you affect ultimately acquiesce to go along with it. The doctors, the hospitals. Now the docs, the hospitals, the pharmaceutical industry are kind of on board. They're not going to sabotage this. But there could be others, particularly using the legal system. It's going to be a struggle.
Okay, now what in your view, since you so often advises organizations on policy matters, what in your view is missing from this bill? That things that should have been in there, you would like to see them in there, or what parts do you disagree with?
Well, the one thing I already mentioned, this weak mandate that we have that allows young people basically to pay a small penalty and remain uninsured, ultimately means that this market reform for the individual market, small group market, is not going to work well, if at all. And I think it has to be revisited. There are ways actually to do this. For example, many people, including Princeton's Paul Starr, have argued that instead of a mandate, we should tell young people, you have 1 year to sign up and we won't look at your health status. If you miss that window, then you'll be in the old system where your health status will count. If you're sick, you won't get insurance. That's not a mandate. That's giving people a choice. But it's sort of like the mafia. It's a deal you can't refuse sort of deal. And I think that's what we should have done. The American way is to give people deals they can't refuse. The Americans hate to be told what to do. So that's one. The other one is there is a nuisance in the American health system that springs out of our approach to tort law, and that is medical malpractice. The Republicans had asked for it, and I think as a courtesy to them, the Obama administration should have put that in. There is a little bit in the bill to study alternative resolutions to malpractice, but it's only a gesture. They should have really put something in there. There are models of alternative dispute resolution where you don't yank a physician into court and then have him judged by postal clerks and economists like me who know nothing about medicine. There are different ways to solve this problem, and that was not addressed. And the third big one is the bill does not in itself control healthcare spending at all. It puts in place some mechanisms we could use, for example, cost-effectiveness analysis, which is research to
explain that to us.
Cost-effective analysis is research that says what works in healthcare and what doesn't, and then secondly, of 3 therapeutic approaches to a problem, which is the cheapest. That gives you the same outcome. This research is badly needed. It was, of course,
other countries have it, like
every
in
other
England.
Country, every country does it.
In many other countries.
Private
France,
insurance in America does it.
Australia.
Yeah, Australia does it. Canada does it. Germany, England, nice. Yeah. All of that is already done. And the private sector, insurance sector in America is doing it too. But you cannot have government money in it. Immediately pictures of Hitler appeared. Death panels, Sarah Palin's death panels, Senator Grassley's killing grandma images, granny, this is an unfortunate thing. But it's in the bill, whether they like it or not. And the other thing they have in the bill is a new body that can make suggestions for cost control that the Congress has to vote up and down and can only undo unless Congress has a better idea. So this is an independent body of stakeholders. That's, I think, a very good idea. And a lot of money for health information technology, for electronic information. But per se, the bill does not control costs.
Okay, so give us your overall assessment of this bill.
Overall, I personally, and many others I talked to, including, incidentally, former Republican Senate leader Bill Frist, Princetonian. I taught a course with him.
Wasn't he your student at one point?
He was once my student, then he was my colleague in the course. Most of us believe it was good to get something passed. No one expects this to be perfect, because this is a messy democracy where in the end there's horse trading. The bill that comes out is never pretty. But it's just like when you build a house, when you move in, it's never perfect. You'll have the plumbers and the electricians fixing stuff that isn't working. This bill is a little bit like that. It needs work down the pike. But it was good to give at least 30 million Americans a chance to have health insurance. The other 20, who are they? I think close to 10 million of those are illegal immigrants.
True.
Although actually that's not a good term. It's people who are here illegally. Right? And for them, they're not in the bill. Obama had said, absolutely, we will not. And you really can't. We'll deal with them the way we always have dealt with the uninsured, neighborhood health centers. In other words, they won't go without care. But you can't put them in the bill. So you have that left, but there's still another 10 million who might not be insured. But overall, this was a good thing to have done. And I would bet if the Republicans, even if they had the Senate and the House, a majority, I doubt they would actually repeal the bill. I don't think that would be very popular, because the benefits of that bill are already beginning now, that children up to age 26 can be on the parents' policies. These are things people like. Try to take that away.
Good. Thank you very much. I think I'm sorry to say that that's all we have time for today. So thank you for being with us today, and thank Uwe Reinhardt, and thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time. This is Mei Chang for International Forum.